Happy Wall Street Wednesday, everybody, or Weed Wednesday, or whatever you want to call it. Maybe I'll call it Weed Wednesday because I typically talk about the cannabis industry on Wednesdays or in my Wednesday video presentations. But it's Lance here, in case you didn't know. Um, I am a longtime member of the Abacus Group, also a team leader, Team Mamba. And the Abacus Group is a system that was founded, created, designed specifically for black people to learn how to create long-term generational wealth in the stock market. So if you have any questions about the Abacus Group, get at me. And then I am also co-founder of BH Capital Enterprises, where I provide some a little more specialized or niche uh, knowledge, specifically cannabis industry and charts. So a small area of technical analysis. And of course, if you have any information or any questions about that, definitely get at me. My email is lance@bhcapitalenterprises.com. But the topic that I'm going to discuss today is centered around researching cannabis companies. So as you can see on your screen here, I'm on OTCMarkets.com. Now this is where the majority of cannabis companies are going to be found on the over-the-counter markets. So I really want to say probably 90%, and that's just a rough guess. And of course, you have some that trade NASDAQ, some that trade New York Stock Exchange, etc., etc. But for the most part, they are over-the-counter. And the thing about over-the-counter is that it's not one of your major exchanges where you're going to find your uh, blue chip companies, your very well established long time companies type, you're not going to really find that over the counter. Um, and really, a big issue with trading over the counter stocks is that um, the reporting requirements are typically different depending on what tier it trades on. So, speaking of tiers, there are three main tiers when it comes to trading over the counter. And each tier has its own separate requirements in order for a company to list on that particular or trade on that particular tier. So you have OTCQX, OTCQB, and you have OTC Pink. And then Pink is further broken down into some real crazy stuff. So the first thing that you want to do, or the first thing that I do when I'm researching cannabis companies, is I look on OTC markets to see what tier that particular company is trading on. If it's trading on the OTCQX, then I know it meets some specific requirements, like their financials are audited, they're current on their financials. Basically, the company is pretty transparent. So just about anything I want to know about the company, I can find it in its financials. Um, so just knowing that piece of information, I think, is very important because it gives you some important details about the company that are really that really should be taken into consideration when deciding on any type of investment, especially a long term, type buy and hold type of investment. So I know right off the gate that a company that's trading on the best market over the counter is not a shell company. Because if it was a shell company, it wouldn't qualify, as you can see here. Penny stocks, shells, and companies in bankruptcy cannot qualify for OTCQX. And you have to be sponsored by um, certain OTC sponsors, OTCQX sponsors, in order to uh, list. So there are many different requirements when it comes to listing on this exchange. So this is uh, the best tier right here. Another thing about this tier is that um, I start looking out for more clues that the company may uplist to one of the major exchanges, whether it be NASDAQ or New York Stock Exchange. For instance, Aurora Cannabis, ticker symbol ACB, they were once an OTCQX company. Um, and then OTCQB has its own set of requirements. As you can see, it says to be eligible, companies must be current in their reporting and undergo an annual verification and management certification process. And then they also must meet the 1 cent bid test and may not be in bankruptcy. So a little less strict, but still, a good, a decent tier that allows you to kind of weed out, some of the better companies in the stack. So in order to, find out what's, more specific information for each tier, you just click on these links here, international. So it'll give you the eligibility standards, disclosure standards for each for international companies that are looking to list over the counter on the best exchange. So then it breaks it down into um, international financial standards, and then premier financial standards for international companies. So it has what the initial requirements are. So when a company is first looking to uplist to the OTCQX, they have to meet uh, a combination of these requirements. And then from that point forward, they have to meet a combination of the ongoing requirements. So when you hear news of, company XYZ has been approved to trade OTCQX or OTCQB, or company XYZ is no longer being traded on any one tier, that's important information to know because it should trigger in your mind what did they do that has now disqualified. What did they do or what did they not do that has disqualified them from no longer being listed on, QX or QB? So, however, if they are uplisting to a better tier over the counter, then that's definitely a good sign. Um, so yeah, that's and then domestic companies, so United States companies have their own standards as well, and it breaks it down in the same way. Remember, I said that there were OTCQX sponsors, and as a part of that approval process, these companies have to submit a letter from one of these sponsors in order to be considered um, for OTCQX. Um, so yeah, that's one of the first things that I do is I look to see if this whatever particular company being traded over the counter, in this case a cannabis company, I look to see which tier they're trading on. So I'll tell you, OTC Markets is probably the only place as far as market research that's going to tell you the specific tier. If you go to Yahoo Finance, it's just going to say OTC. If you go to Google Finance, it's just going to say OTC. Morningstar is just going to say OTC. So you're not going to know that information. You could be on Yahoo Finance considering a shell company. You know what I'm saying? So I always suggest to my clients to check OTC markets and start there with your research on cannabis companies. That way you know which tier that company is trading on. So, um, and then of course, I conduct some preliminary research within the OTC markets um, website. Let me see if I can think of a ticker that maybe over the counter. Most of them that I can think of off the top of my head are have uplisted. So let me pull up my little cannabis portfolio spreadsheet so I don't have to sit here and try to guess for too long. Let's see. Oh, let's do MedMen. Okay, so boom, right off the gate, you see MedMen Enterprises, but really you see Gray Markets and QX. So let's see if there has been any information about um, it losing its certification for OTCQX. So far, I don't see any information about that. Let's look under disclosure. So right off gate with knowing that MedMen Enterprises is on OTCQX, I know that it's not a shell company. Now things can change, like I kind of alluded to. Um, a company can go from a company can be delisted and go from QX to QB or to Pink. It can happen, just like they can uplist. If they don't meet certain requirements, they can lose that certification. So, very important um, that you keep up with such a thing. So, and so far, I don't see anything about that. Okay, so in 2018, in June, they got the QB certification. Where's the QX certification? Yeah, I don't see a QX certification. That's interesting. But yeah, so as you can see on OTCMarkets.com, it's a very simple, straightforward website. The quarterly reports, annual reports, news, things like that, all get listed here within the website. So it's almost like a one-stop shop. Almost. Of course, you want to do deeper due diligence because even then, you're not going to always have all your information in one place. So, um, and it's only going to give you 3 years of information, and you want, as much as you can. And with this being the cannabis industry, a lot of these companies, they're not going to have, 10, 20 years of information of financials for you to evaluate. But so yeah, that's something to do as well. I also like to go to some of the main websites to check out, latest cannabis news, whether it be MJ Biz Daily. Also, what else? New Cannabis Ventures is a big one, and so many more. Mary Jane, but New Cannabis Ventures is probably one of my go-to websites for um, cannabis industry information. I like the way that information is broken down for investors. You could tell that it's specifically geared to the investor. So that's what I really like about that website. You can also search news by ticker, company name, etc., etc. Um, but yeah, so those are like some preliminary things that you can do early in your research to prevent you from wasting time on crappy companies. Because if it's a shell company, I'd hate to come across company ABC and be like, oh, this is a cannabis company, and then see all these lies, but I don't know it, but see all this information being put out about these companies, basically being pumped up, and it's really cheap, and I'm like, man, I can grab gang of shares for $100. Let me just, go and throw a few hundred at this mug. And completely neglect to go and find out what tier this particular company trades on. And then, only to find out later that, maybe it's a shell company, um, and they're basically paying these popular uh, sites to pump their company so that they can make money, so the insiders can make money. That happens a lot over the counter, so that's something that you need to be careful of. Also, let me say that just because a company is trading um, OTC pink tier doesn't necessarily mean that it's a shell company. However, uh, the most important thing to know is that no QX company is a shell company. So, um, what else can I really say when it comes to researching cannabis companies? Just be careful. Be careful. Don't be in a rush. This industry is still very, very, very young. So you got plenty of time to conduct thorough, thorough research to make sure that you make the best possible decision with your money. And also remember that this is you're playing the long game. You don't expect, to build your cannabis portfolio today, throw some money at it tomorrow, and have a gang of money sitting in your account the next week. Don't come into it with that type of mindset. Be thinking out 5, 10, 15 years ahead. So that's why I say take your time, be diligent, be thorough, and make sure that this whatever company fits your criteria. So you definitely want to develop a set of criteria um, that you would require for um, any potential investment, especially something that's trading over the counter. So if you guys want to check out my cannabis offering, I have my subscription based offering called the Greenhouse. I do cannabis options alerts, and they are probably 95% swing trade alerts. And I also have a cannabis portfolio where I am working to analyze and evaluate as many publicly traded cannabis companies as I can based on a specific set of criteria. So I'm basically quantifying these companies on like a scale 0 to 5. And you can join me on that journey and be there every step of the way. So the cost for the portfolio analysis is $25 a month, and then the cost for the cannabis options alerts is $169 a month, and it includes the cannabis option portfolio. So you automatically get access to that um, when you subscribe to the cannabis options alerts. So if you have any questions about any of that, hit me up, let me know. I love talking about this stuff, but y'all enjoy the rest of your day, and remember, the dream never sleeps.